Pleasant greetings, y'all. Proud Filipina Charm Zespina here, who knows full well about digital's biggest and most relevant trend or piece of technology is artificial intelligence, or simply AI. This has swept and stirred the community of software developers and programmers like no other. And the arguments far outweigh the downsides of AI for now, from saving time, streamlining work, eliminating redundancies, to name a few, while on the other side, the minuses include high costs, the elimination of humans in the equation, the lack of spontaneity or emotion. And then how about the fear of the program going rogue or too intelligent when it crosses over to the execution of tasks beyond its programmed instructions? VOA's Inside Story takes a deep dive on this week's presentation, Giving Voice to AI.
This week on the Inside Story, giving voice to AI. From writing school papers to diagnosing mental health issues, artificial intelligence has come a long way, but the growing list of technology companies eager to profit has some experts fearing what comes next. Plus, invasive species in Florida wreak havoc on local ecosystems. Does America's Sunshine State stand a chance? Now, on the Inside Story, giving voice to AI.
Hi, I'm Tina Trin in New York. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are a part of our lives, whether we're comfortable with it or not. It's not just ChatGPT writing your kids' school papers. It's the voice recognition in Siri, the giant robots in manufacturing plants, and the annoying chatbots that pop up on our screens and try to talk to us. These technologies are supposed to make our lives simpler, and increasingly, they're having more of a say in our day-to-day reality. As we'll see in the next half hour, AI can give voice to the voiceless and diagnose illness, but it also has the potential to be misused by individuals, corporations, even nations. Every person's voice is as unique as a fingerprint, but what if you no longer sounded like you or couldn't talk at all? Using text-to-speech technology, artificial intelligence can help, but so far the results have been mixed, with those who lost their voices sounding more like robots than humans. But emerging technologies are increasingly showing promise, letting those who've lost their voices sound more like themselves.
It's amazing, I love it.
When Bradley Heaven talks, it sounds like this.
Kind of, ha ha.
Heaven has cerebral palsy and is nonverbal. He uses an eye-tracking device to communicate his thoughts. But until recently, the digital voice that spoke for him sounded pretty digital. But a company called Acapella Group has come up with a way to turn his voice from this.
It's really cool and unique.
Into this.
It's really cool.
The Belgium-based company creates personalized digital voices for those experiencing speech impairment or voice loss. For those affected, it's a more human way to express themselves.
The key point here is the identity of the person. We want to help the person to be himself or herself in the daily life.
Acapella Group's My Own Voice is a voice banking service that allows a customer to bank or save their voice for future use. Users record themselves reading 50 different sentences, or if they can't speak, enlist a friend or family member to be their voice. The technology uses algorithms and artificial intelligence.
So that just based on 50 sentences, then we can create a new synthetic voice.
The resulting synthetic voice is more personalized and can be used with various assistive devices. Daniel O'Connor, Heaven's aide, friend, and business partner, recorded his voice for Heaven to use. He says the process was easy.
The first thing Brad said to me is, hey, let's order some coffee, and don't worry, it's my treat. And he used my voice to say that.
Experts say this technology could be meaningful for users.
There are individuals whose speech is beginning to change, and by their own admission, it may not be the way they used to sound, but to them, it is who they are.
Banking a voice to strengthen one's sense of identity. Some groundbreaking research is being developed in the medical field, connecting your voice to your health. A U.S. government-funded project is collecting thousands of voice samples and using artificial intelligence to diagnose mental and physical illness. VOA's Julie Tabo has this report from Washington, D.C.
Dr. Yael Ben-Susan examines the vocal cords of a patient. At the University of South Florida Health Voice Center, she treats patients with a range of voice disorders, such as upper airway, voice, and swallowing disorders. And lately, she's been helping to lead a new project to build a database of 30,000 human voice recordings and train computers to detect diseases through changes in the human voice.
Not only to build that data, but also to develop the guidelines of how to share that data, how to collect that data, and also how to use that data for future AI research.
She works with a team of 45 investigators across 12 different universities in North America, as well as a startup in Europe.
When sunlight strikes rainbows in the air.
They study voice samples to help them detect illnesses like Parkinson's disease.
And how hard did it hit him?
Cancer.
Your spot is on the key again.
And voice disorders, such as vocal fold paralysis. The team also studies mood disorders, such as depression and anxiety.
So when somebody is depressed, sad, has anxiety, of course, their speech changes.
The study is one of 4 data generation projects funded by the National Institutes of Health's Bridge to Artificial Intelligence program, designed to use AI to tackle complex biomedical challenges.
They realized that there was such a big gap between the technology that we had available and the clinical knowledge and what we use in clinical care in our hospitals.
And doing it while maintaining participants' privacy.
We want to think about the ethics associated with collecting people's voices and how do we keep it private.
The study will start enrolling participants in the coming year. Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
There are a growing number of startups trying to capitalize on the newest artificial intelligence technology that can replicate human voices. Well Said Labs, based in Seattle, Washington, is one group that's creating synthetic voices for companies to use for advertising, marketing, and training. VOA's Phil Dierking has the story on the pros and cons of generative AI.
She has a narration style, a promo style, and a conversational style. So I'll paste this in, and we can just click create.
With AI voices delivering increasingly more human performances, content creators have...
This voice is synthetic, the product of a human actor's voice and technology.
We can take a smaller data set and train on the pitch, pausing, intonation, emphasis, and more of those stylistic qualities of the voice to really capture that authentic voice in the production.
Matt Hawking is the CEO of Well Said Labs, a Seattle technology firm that spun out of the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, a research nonprofit. He's working to create computerized voices to sound, well, more human. Customers use these voices in advertising, marketing, and training courses without having to hire voice actors. A voice actor records at Well Said Labs. From that recording, the firm uses artificial intelligence to teach software subtle things: how long a voice actor pauses, when they take a breath, what words are emphasized. A customer picks among voices and enters text they want the voice to say.
It's great to finally meet you. I'm Wade, and I've been told that my good-natured and honest voice is great for all types of e-learning and training content.
Well Said Labs is part of a tech trend called generative AI, software that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to create new content, words, voices, or images based on vast amounts of data the technology has learned. AI applications sometimes raise ethical concerns. Well Said Labs has created guidelines for customers using the generated voices.
They can't use their voices for anything pornographic or anything hateful or anything violent and anything illegal.
With AI moving into many fields, creative professionals are asking how they will be affected.
As long as there's still like a human at the center of it and we're building off of that, I feel more comfortable doing something that might be a little bit more computer generated.
Another concern: will jobs be eliminated? Maybe, say observers, but generative AI like Well Said Labs might also increase creative output and improve performance.
I think more often than not, it's going to be a kind of collaboration between humans and AI to really streamline and speed up the process of creation.
It may be too early to know the consequences of generative AI like Wellstead Labs, but it's likely here to stay. For VOA News, Phil Dierking, Seattle, Washington.
Now, we've talked about some of the new worlds made possible by artificial intelligence and voice synthesis. But for even casual fans of science fiction, AI can conjure images of a bleak reality where machines outsmart humans and no technology is to be trusted. I spoke with Nithya Thadani, CEO of RAIN, an agency that works with companies to create voice and conversational AI experiences. Here's what she had to say about the responsible way forward with this powerful technology. Is there a way to moderate this type of content that's going to be generated, especially when you think about, how easy it is to tell how difficult rather it is to tell the difference between what's real and something that's actually authentic?
Absolutely. And that regulation and this type of thinking has to come really quickly because of the pace with which this AI is accelerating. So if you think about this in the context of OpenAI's ChatGPT, which is a very similar concept, that AI is generating content based on what it's reading and training on from the internet. And if any of that content is biased or fake, it's going to pull that and potentially kind of ingrain it in the next iteration of content. Now, if you imagine that happening over and over again, you can see how it would become very hard to detect where the original content came from and kind of what is real versus computer generated. Voice has an even lower barrier, and so it's really important that we think about how we can get ahead of this, and that has to come in the form of government regulation.
And maybe that's what needs to happen, is some sort of system for flagging this type of content. Your company mentioned this idea of verified voices. Can you explain that?
When we think about labeling and regulation, there are three concepts that I think are very important here. One is consent. So do we have the consent of the celebrity or politician or even patient to use their voice in the way that we're talking about? And even when we do have that consent, how do we make sure that the voice is only used within those barriers of consent, so within the context that they, and that is potentially going to require some type of legal involvement, right? Like this is going to go into the space of what does legal consent to use your voice look like. Another bucket here is disclosure, and this is a big one, right? So this is, how do you make somebody aware that the content that you are putting forth is computer generated? This is going to come in the form of tagging and flagging that content and really thinking about how you can tag metadata. It's going to require a new vocabulary entirely about how we think about kind of disclaimers and labels on technology. The last bucket here is really detection. So once the AI is actually out there, how do we detect what is computer generated and what is not? And the tech companies are going to have to play a big role in this as well. But once you do detect, false or misinformation, how do you then put a system in place to be able to remove that content? And who owns the content that you're removing?
And then on the flip side of that, we have creators who are making artistic choices, willful artistic choices to use synthetic voices. A couple of years ago, this documentary called Roadrunner about Anthony Bourdain's life made headlines because it was determined that the director used a synthesized voice to pass for the late chef. It read a few lines that Bourdain never actually spoke when he was alive. Let's take a look.
You are successful, and I am successful, and I'm wondering, are you happy?
So Nithya, a lot of critique and discussion coming out of that once people found out that that wasn't actually Bourdain talking, and the director never disclosed this to viewers.
What's so interesting here is just, is this ethical? Is it ethical to use his voice in the way that this director did? He took his own creative liberties to kind of bring Anthony Bourdain's voice to life. Would Anthony Bourdain have, who is such an authentic and creative person, would he have consented to this? And would he have agreed that what was written is the same as what is said out loud? You really hit the nail on the head, though, with the disclosure piece. That is actually what caused so much controversy around this film, because it wasn't made aware to viewers that Anthony Bourdain did not say these words. So it felt very deceptive. There is something very authentic and intimate about our voices. They're ours. And people really have a visceral reaction when it seems like you are using someone's voice in a way that is not genuine and authentic.
What advice do you have for your clients who are considering exploring this new territory?
When we're advising any company or brand on how to think about voice content, it is very similar to any way that you would think about branding, right? So companies spend a lot of time thinking about the colors of their brand, about the jingle or the sounds of their brand, and the voices that represent their brand are no different. So whether that is a celebrity that is aligned with your brand values or a voice that you're generating from scratch, that really needs to be thoughtful and take into account the audience that you're trying to serve. And actually, this is a really interesting place where the topic of bias and inclusivity comes into play, and that's another place where we're always advising our clients, which is, voice in any AI is only as smart as the data that trains it. So if we are going to create voices that are supposed to be representative of an audience, we need to make sure that that training data is representative of all voices, right? Of minorities, of women. If you have training data and voice training data that is primarily Caucasian males, that's the type of human speech you're going to get. And so it's really important that companies are just eyes wide open to the fact that there needs to be inclusivity there. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that we have more diversity and equity in the people who are creating that data, right? So that they can make sure that these data sets are being equitable to all voices.
As we've seen, filmmakers are finding ways to use artificial intelligence to resuscitate long-gone voices. But the technology can also make motion pictures more accessible to wider audiences. From San Francisco, California, VOA's Matt Dibble has more.
How to make a movie work in another language. For decades, there have been only two options: subtitles or dubbing. Many viewers resist watching films with subtitles, which can distract from the action. And dubbing, which replaces a film's dialogue,
This is the first time I've ever heard the word coward applied to the valiant warrior Bomir.
Usually results in mouths out of sync with the words they are supposedly speaking. When director Scott Mann first saw a foreign language dub of a film he made,
I was kind of appalled and devastated because I saw how different it was.
This got him thinking that there might be a technological solution. He co-founded Flawless, a company that uses a kind of visual artificial intelligence to digitally modify the faces in a film to match the new words.
Mit einigen der bekanntesten und kriminellsten Familien in dieser Stadt in Verbindung bringt und
The system is taking a very detailed look and an understanding of how a certain character talks. The system is able to kind of retime those mouth movements, like subtly alter them so they fit the new dialogue.
C'est amusant, monsieur.
Flawless uses voice actors who are fluent speakers of the new language. Another company, DeepDub, uses AI to simulate the original actor's voice in the translation.
That's not something that happens to me.
No es algo que suele pasarme.
We need only a sample of 2 to 5 minutes of the actors' voices in order to create what we call a voice model.
The new technologies promise to accelerate a growing appetite for content across language borders. But in the process, the line between humans and machines continues to blur. Matt Dibble for VOA News, San Francisco.
It's not just humans who can use new tech to find their own voice. Fluent Pet is a tool that offers an innovative way for pet owners to communicate and connect with their furry loved ones. By using a recordable push button, pets can now express their wants, needs, and desires. effectively speaking to their humans. This time, VOA's Julie Tabo travels to Glen Allen in the state of Virginia.
Go, let's go play. Let's go play. Go girl.
Morgan Krug knows how to communicate with her pets.
Drop. Good job. Beep. Good girl. Catch.
And, like most animal owners, usually knows when they want something.
More pets.
But now her daily interactions are even stronger, she says, thanks to a set of buttons with pre-recorded words that her pets can push to express themselves.
Wet food. I started off a skeptic. I knew that they could request outside or specific toys. Frisbee. Oh. Play. Frisbee play. But this allows them to be specific about what they want. Beep.
A dog trainer by trade, Krug is using a system called Fluent Pet, where she can use her own voice to record words.
Ball.
This has been especially helpful for her cat Jasper, who is blind.
Kibble. Having the buttons and a voice when she doesn't have her eyesight to navigate by has really enriched her life in ways that I could have never anticipated.
So thanks to buttons, we're seeing people report behaviors and interactions with their dog or their cat that, to me, as someone who has a background in cognitive science, I find totally astonishing.
The company has also developed a Fluent Pet app that owners can use to collect data on their pets and keep track of what their dog or their cat has learned over time.
Pets. Kibble training.
One thing is clear, systems like this hold a lot of promise for future advancements in human-animal interactions.
What does the door want? Outside. Okay, let's go.
Julie Tabo, VOA News, Glen Allen, Virginia.
Millions flock to Florida for its warm weather and sunshine. But it's not just people who found a new home in this warm southern U.S. state. VOA's Dora McQuarr has this story from Orlando.
This is an African spurthite, also known as a sulcata.
This African spurred tortoise looks harmless, but it's not. It competes for resources with the native gopher tortoise, which is critical to Florida's ecosystem.
They dig these big burrows underground, and a lot of other animals are going to use those for shelter as well. If gopher tortoises are declining and they're providing homes for hundreds of other animals, then what's going to happen to all those other animals?
There are hundreds of non-native animal species in Florida. Some take over their new habitat, threatening the environment.
Nature relies on variety, and when you don't have variety, it's just more susceptible to collapse.
Florida spends more than $500 million a year trying to contain invasive species. But is it a losing battle?
Once a species starts reproducing in the wild and they have a system that works for them, it's almost next to impossible to eradicate them.
Like the Burmese python. 30 years ago, many escaped a local breeding facility destroyed by a hurricane. Today, there are tens of thousands of pythons in Florida.
It can take out one of our apex predator, which are alligators and crocodiles, and then it'll take down some of the other native animals that are small mammals, some of the rats, the mice, the marsh bunnies, things that are supposed to be food for other things. So they compete with our native animals, and because they're a more dominant species, they win that battle.
What's the rooster say? Ooh, that was a good one.
Many invasives were once someone's pet.
Animals can be a lot of work. The parrots are loud. They live almost 80 years. Tortoises can get really big and live 100 years. So it's a big commitment to have a lot of these animals. People sometimes just go, it's nice in Florida. We'll just let it loose.
Feral hogs, introduced by Spanish explorers centuries ago, are everywhere in Florida. They dig up the soil, sometimes destroying restored native plants.
And then also it actually creates a secondary opening for invasive plant species then to move into those disturbed soil areas. So not only are they destroying what we're doing, they're also creating an opening for additional invasive species.
The Tiger Creek Preserve is home to one of the most diverse ecosystems in the world, says Preserve Manager Cheryl Millett.
It's a biodiversity hotspot, and we have a lot of things that don't exist anywhere else. And if we lost them here, we wouldn't have them anymore on Earth.
It's easy to spot the damage done by wild hogs, but Millett is most concerned about encroaching non-native lizards.
And they've been found using gopher tortoise burrows in South Florida. They've found baby gopher tortoises in the guts of tegu lizards. I'm really worried about their potential impact here.
This invasive species.
Florida officials use hunts, monitoring, exotic pet amnesty programs, and other methods to combat invasive species. But it's a battle with no end in sight. Dora McQuarr, VOA News, Orlando, Florida.
That's all for now. Stay up to date with all the news at voanews.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at VOA News. You can find me on Twitter at TinaTrinNYC. And catch up on past episodes at our free streaming service, VOA Plus. For all those behind the scenes who brought you today's show, I'm Tina Trin. We'll see you next week for the Inside Story.
So that's a wrap for today. We hope you came out a tad more aware or informed, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the same time for another informative and enlightening presentation. Keep in mind to always work hard, aim high, don't lie, be a fuse, and catch the news right here. This has been Sharms Espina for Stories from the Grid.